Today's video is sponsored by the team at Bybit.com. Buying, selling, and trading cryptocurrency should not require you to jump through hoops in 2023. The team at Bybit has you covered. Crypto mining enthusiasts now have a platform to transfer their mined crypto to and liquidate it quickly, easily, and on the go. In a situation where you need to purchase cryptocurrency with a credit card or debit card? No sweat. Bybit provides you multiple avenues for purchasing crypto instantly. Where are my crypto traders at? Bybit has an arsenal of features for spot trading, margin trading, copy trading, and trading bots. Currently, if you deposit $100 with Bybit, you'll receive an extra $20 USDT. Check out Bybit today via the link in the video description. What is going on, miners, and welcome back to the Hobbyist Miner channel. Well, I am joined by no other than Second TL Mining. What's going on, man?
Hey, good on you, mate.
So if you guys are not familiar with this gentleman here, which I'd be very surprised, he is not only a content creator, he's a home crypto miner, and he is a Flux Node connoisseur. So I appreciate you coming on today to talk about Flux Nodes.
Oh, man, I love it. What better to talk about the project that I'm really passionate about?
I reached out to him like, hey, do you want to do a video on this? He's like, absolutely. That is right up my alley. So guys, today we're going to talk about Flux Nodes, a few different kinds of Flux Nodes, as well as pain points, benefits, good practices, things like that. So Second TL, are you ready to jump in?
Yes, please. Let's jump right into it.
All right. So first, we're going to start off talking about running Flux Nodes at home. And why would someone pick doing this? Why would you go this route of running a Flux Node if you had the Flux available? Why would you run a Flux Node at home?
I guess the question is why not?
Okay, all right.
So the way that I like to look at it, right? If you've got the Flux in your wallet, so let's say you're a miner like potentially you and me, and you've got as little or more than 1,000 Flux within your wallet, that is sitting there not earning a return for you at the moment. And starting up a Flux node, it's got a lot of utility. So, again, the way that I like to look at it, if you already have hardware available, you have the skills, you've got the Flux in your wallet, why not make it work for you at the end of the day? And ultimately, the best return that you can get, so there's lots of different types of Flux nodes, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but the highest return ones are the ones that you are hosting from your home. So that's sort of, why I like to look at it as why wouldn't you do it? And even if you have a couple of reasons, there's lots of different options that you can go down with.
So running a Flux node at home gives you the most return on Flux that you'd already be sitting on. Like if you're just going to hodl that Flux, which there's nothing wrong with that. My understanding is that the Flux nodes is, you could go ahead and turn it up in a Flux node today, and then a week from now go, I don't want to run the Flux node anymore, and get your Flux back instantly. Is that correct?
That is spot on. It's within your wallet, within your own custody. And that's one of the unique things about Flux and what some other competitors doesn't do. So the Flux stays within your wallet. You've got full control over. If you wanted to upgrade to a different wallet tier, or let's say the crypto market has pumped recently and you potentially wanted to cash out, it's as easy as, clicking delete within your 𝐓𝐸 wallet, and the Flux would be available for you to do whatever you want with it. So it's really quick and easy, to release your funds in case you have locked it up in a Flux node.
So running a Flux node, pretty much, you have a few different options. You could buy a small little PC, or you could run it on any real PC, but it has to be dedicated to that purpose. You could run it off of a server. Some people have gone the route of creating a server and running it off a server that has the specs to it. Or you could buy a purpose-driven device like the SenseCap M4, that literally its entire design is for that. Is there one avenue that is better than the other that you have found that seems to be the most stable or works the best?
No, I don't necessarily think there's, the one option overall that works the best for everybody and everybody's scenario. Initially when I started with a Raspberry Pi. Why? It was inexpensive, low power, and easy to get going. And it wasn't a massive investment for me, and I could learn out of the experience, right? So That's what I wanted and what I like to do. But as you mentioned, since then I have gravitated to other options. I've ran it on a server, I've ran it on a Windows computer, I've had it on a VPS, traditional VPSs like the AWSs, Netcup's, Contabos, and I have at the moment some with what I like to call a managed VPS. So
Okay.
I've tried all these different options, servers, Raspberry Pis, your own computer, and it depends on what your scenario is. The one is not necessarily better than the other. Um, However, you'll learn some skills regardless throughout the process, and that's also something that I really enjoyed. With Flux is, I wasn't a Linux guy. I don't know about you, but even though I'm in IT, doesn't mean I get to install and work in a Linux command line every single day. So that's the
Yeah.
other benefit that I quite liked of running my own node, to be honest.
Yeah, so I think based off of my experience and who I've talked to and individuals like yourself that I've chatted with, if you're going to go ahead and your plan is to only ever run one, then going with like a mini PC that you throw together, it's out of
Yeah,
the way or whatever, or a purpose-driven one like an M4 Sense Cap. I've
yeah,
used both. I've done videos on both. They'll do the trick. I think once
yeah.
you're at that stage where you're like, I want to run multiples, I found most people will gravitate towards purchasing a server of some kind
Yes.
and
Yeah.
repurposing it with virtual machines in order to get
Yes.
by with that, which is I think is best. And you had actually talked about profitability there. So for those not familiar, you have like three different tiers really. You have your Cumulus, your Nimbus, and then your Stratus. And
Yeah.
pretty drastic. You have 1,000 flux that you need to commit to. It's called collateral. And then you also have 12,500 and then 40,000. Now, they didn't roll. Did they roll out other tiers yet or not yet off of those three for like home hosting?
No, so those are the tiers that is available today. There's one extra or caveat to it, and it's really a Cumulus node, is the Fractus node. So it's slightly
Hmm.
different. It's more of the storage tier, but it's still 1,000 flux. So those are
Yeah.
the collateral that you sort of have to lock up, is within those exact numbers that you've mentioned already.
Yeah. So talking profitability, because that's
Yep.
what drives a majority of our communities, talking
Yes.
about Flux, in that regard, you do this, you instead people, you can almost think of this almost like a staking mechanism, but
Yeah.
as you had said at the very top of the video, you still own it. It's totally
Yeah.
yours. And the nice thing is like, this isn't like Ethereum where you've staked
Yeah.
32 Ethereum and then you don't get it back. Like you could literally host a node today and then tomorrow retrieve it back. No
Yeah.
fees, no nothing type of deal. So
Yeah.
profitability on this, is hosting it at home the most profitable? Like, is that
Yes.
what has been determined?
Absolutely. And yeah, and that's just how it is. And the way that I like to look at it, and the way that I like to explain it potentially to somebody that's new, is a XY curve, and at the bottom you've got effort, and at the top you would have return, and it's linear like this. And the various different options of hosting a Flux node works like that. Obviously, if you're hosting at home and you've got the expertise and the resources, you will get the most reward. And that's just how it works like that. If you have it hosted with somebody else or within a VPS, there's obviously cost involved with that, but in some instances it's a little easier, and then hence the return is a little easier. And that's also sort of where Titan potentially comes into play as well. So absolutely, if you're hosting it at home, it's the highest return, and depending on the tier, that's sort of where the returns might differ between the different tiers.
Yeah, now I don't
At the
know this off.
moment,
Yeah, now I don't know this
yeah,
off the top of my head. I literally have it up, but it looks like
yeah,
Cumulus is 7.5%, Nimbus is 12.5%, Stratus is 30%. So you're earning that much flux per month, correct? So like
no,
7.5, or is that per payout? Like, how
no,
does that work?
no, no. I think what you've got open is the Run on Flux webpage that
Okay.
has a percentage of the block reward. I think that's the percentages
Ah,
that you're looking on. So yeah, just to explain that to the audience, how Flux coins are minted. There's a 50-50 split between half of it goes to miners like you and me and potentially a lot of your audience. The other half goes to node providers. within the 50% of the node providers, that's where you mentioned 30% goes to Stratus, and the splits goes. In terms of APR, and for the guys that are unfamiliar, I have a little website that I created and hosting it on Flux.
Yeah.
That's got the different APRs based on the block rewards and how big the queues are, specifically for nodes. And if you're specifically talking APR calculations, in the Cumulus tier, it's about 13%.
13. Okay.
Nimbus is 7.6, and Stratus is about 6%. So that's the
Percent
APR
of
calculation.
what you have invested of that 1,000, or percent of that block reward?
No, percent
Okay.
that you've invested. So if you take Cumulus as an example, right?
Yeah.
So I threw out the number that said 13% as an example. So if you take 1,000 Flux, you would get 13% worth of Flux in return as all the rewards if your node stays up. And that's the big caveat. So if you make sure that your node is up, then you can hit those numbers.
Is that 13? How often is that 13%? Like, because how often are payouts? Let's go through that a little bit. So, like, on a Flux node, when do you get paid out?
Great question, and I see a lot in Discord, and I'm on the Flux Discord all day long, where people think that nodes, or the general misconception around Flux nodes and how the rewards work, is similar to mining. People think that I've submitted a share, and then as soon as blocks gets hit, I will get a payout as soon as my payout threshold is specified, right? And that's what people are used to. However, Flux nodes doesn't work like that. There is a queue system. So depending on how many nodes, so every block reward, the person in the front of the queue would get a payment. And there's actually a nice little diagram, and maybe we can flash it up at some point. But so if every block that gets hit every 2 minutes, the person in the front of the queue per tier of nodes, so Cumulus, Nimbus, Stratus, he will get the full reward as soon as he hits the front of the queue. So when will you get paid? Let's say you are running a node yourself, as soon as you get in the front of the queue, as simple as that. And there's various different tools that you can use to track it. You won't get a half a Flux every single day. You will only get your reward as soon as you end up at the front of the queue. Now, saying that, how long is these queues, and when more or less can you expect it? So again, for Cumulus, it's about 13 days at the moment. So 13 and a half days. So 13 days and 14 hours.
If you're up all the time. If you're up all the time. 13 and a half days. And then every 13 and a half days, are you getting that 13% you mentioned?
Yes, if you're hitting it, and that's like across a year calculation, right? So the way that I do that calculations is assuming it's for a full year to get the APR calculations working. So and that assumes the way that the calcs work, and it's I probably don't want to bore everybody with it, but again, the way that Flux tokenomics work is there's native Flux and there's parallel assets. That 13%, the way that I calculated today, is based on the current released parallel assets. So those are the parallel assets that you can go ahead and claim specifically today. So there's even more potential return in the future, and I think Dan and the Mining King has got a nice word where they like to look at it as delayed return on investment. But anyway, so those calculations are taking into account that your node is up 24/7. It is staying up 24/7 and only taking into account the current release parallel assets.
So on Flux nodes, and by the way, guys, this guy here has an awesome website. We're going to talk about it here before the end because I want you guys to check it out. But we've talked about all the praise on the Flux nodes and home Flux, having a home Flux node. But there's some big challenges with running your home as a Flux node. One of them, as we talked about many times here, was uptime. And then in addition to that, I would say running a home Flux node has a high skill ceiling. It is not a plug and play. It is not a quick thing to do. It's a lot of work. So let's talk about that uptime. So how does uptime, because you talked about queues and you talked about having to be up all the time to get paid. How detrimental is uptime when it comes down to having a Flux node?
Massive. When you talk about uptime, the way that, again, as I mentioned, if we sort of hammer on the Cumulus queue, which I consider almost the hardest node to run, to be honest. um, and the reason why I say that is because the queues are so long. As it's 13 days, it was even longer at some point. It was like 15 days
Wow.
before. But anyway, at the moment it's like 13 and a half days. But if you are not meeting the benchmark, so what will happen is Flux will continuously check that number one, your node is online, because the other thing is Flux is not the same as some of these other node projects. There is legitimate applications running on your node. So you're in a sense a little data center at home hosting your Flux node. People have their applications on there and they are
Yeah.
paying for it. They're not hosting it for free. So there's an expectation that in order to get a reward, you need to make sure that you're always passing the benchmarks. And depending on the node here that you have, the benchmarks would differ. And the internet is up, it can communicate. There's nothing wrong with your network. And if that fails, so let's say you fail benchmarks, it will retest benchmarks again and again, but you've got a window. So Flux gives you a nice little window. It's about, to make it simple, 3 hours. Every node has about a 3 hours maintenance window. That allows you as a node operator to perform your maintenance, patching, updates, moving it from one server to the next, whatever you need to do. You've got 3 hours to do that. If you're failing benchmarks or your node is offline at the end of your maintenance period, you get kicked to the back of the queue. You can't jump the queue again. You're at the back. Tough luck. And you see it often in the Discord as well, where a guy is like, "Oh man, I'm 2 days away from a payment. My internet went out, or the power cut happened, and I'm now at the back of the queue." Right. So that's the unfortunate truth, and it's a tough pill to swallow for many. And that's why it's hard, because you need to make sure that you're always online. You're monitoring it. It's not a set and forget and walk away at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think between that and the high skill ceiling to get set up, I think that's really where the challenge is. I personally have set up Flux nodes, and then they'll pass a benchmark, and then they continue to fail because of upload and things like that. So now let's talk about alternatives, because that's one that I've gone the direction of. Our first alternative, they launched some time after the Flux nodes, which was Titan nodes. And Titan nodes, I tell people they shouldn't even call them nodes, because they're not putting them in the same ballpark as traditional home nodes. It's very different. A Titan node is a hosted node that's already out there, and you're depositing a fraction of the entire node. So you could take something like, I think most of them are Stratus or Nimbus or whatnot. They're much more expensive. So you could take an amount, like I took 2,000 Flux last July, actually, and I put it into a Titan node. I don't have to run anything at home. I don't have to do anything here at all. And I just provide it into it. And this is more your traditional staking, where you put it into the node and you could have 10 other people that do the same thing. And the node's up and running. It is physical. It does exist somewhere. A lot of these nodes are run by the Flux team and some other partners. And but and then I don't say, you set it and forget it. And this is traditional staking. I can't take it out. I can't do anything with it. It sits in there. And then you earn profitability on it. But correct me if I'm wrong, that profitability is definitely not as high as running nodes yourself. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that sort of illustrates my example that I mentioned earlier. The amount of effort that you put in, the return that you can expect, right? So, and that's just how simple it works. But when Titan was first launched, I sort of was a little bit of a snob about it, but it's definitely got its place in the market. And if you can't meet the benchmarks, or you don't have the skill level, this provides you the opportunity to earn extra Flux on the Flux potentially that you've already mined, that's sitting there doing nothing. So it's definitely useful. On top of that, this is not, again, traditional staking. In the background, there is today, and I look at the Titan wallet every single day. I use it to test my website's performance, because it's got a lot of nodes next to it, because it's like any other node provider, right? It's currently got 106 Stratus nodes and 10 Nimbus nodes. And on those nodes, there's people's applications running on. So it's not just staking for the sake of staking or block validation. People are hosting their applications on these Titan nodes. So a real node out there that somebody else is managing for you, and for the management and their resources, you'll just get a slightly lower return, but you're
Hmm.
still getting something without having to do anything.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with these is, as you talked about, like less of a return, but then in addition to that, this is true staking mechanism. Like
Yes.
I don't get that Flux back until July, till my anniversary date. And then
Yes.
it's fully unlocked and available and everything. So the last option I'm curious on, because this is actually something I'm looking to do,
Yes.
is on VPSs. So
Yes.
VPSs, give us the rundown. What is a VPS in conjunction with a Flux node?
So the way that I like to look at, what is a VPS? A VPS is a virtual private server. But in terms of Flux nodes, the way that I like to look at it is sort of two separate tiers. And there's a lot of people do a lot of different things, and I'll try my best to explain it simply. But the way, again, that I like to look at it is two tiers within a VPS tier, if I can call it that. There is managed VPS services, and good examples of those. And the video is not necessarily sponsored by anyone. I'm just calling out the services that they are, and I'm actually making use of these services and have used other services in the past. But it's the likes of host nodes, Goldie Tech nodes, Terra hosting in the future, where this person will stand up a physical server and then install Flux and run the Flux node specifically for you. So their job is to make sure that it keeps on passing benchmarks, it is up all the time, and you just provide them your collateral detail. They'll take care of patching, installing, all of that type of stuff. They take care of. So it's similar to that. I like to look at Titan,
Mhm.
but it's still within your own wallet, and that's the sort of drawback between
Yeah.
Titan and potentially a VPS is within Titan, you send your Flux to the Flux wallet and they will do the management from that point onward. So it physically leaves your wallet. Whereas with a managed VPS, as I like to call it, you just give them your credentials of the stake and they will take care of the rest, and they'll make sure that it's up all the time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, nothing is perfect. These guys also go through issues, so it doesn't mean that your node will not go offline. Mine has, with multitude of these providers, it's just normal. So there might be issues. You might get reimbursements. I'm not saying they're going to do that necessarily, but it's normally a case-by-case basis depending on what's happened. Anyway, so that's the one tier that I like to call a managed VPS. The other side of it is more a traditional VPS. You rent a virtual private server from a company like 𝐕𝐢𝐝𝐻. I wouldn't even say AWS because they're too expensive, but somebody like Netcups or, I'm not even going to call out the other one that I'm thinking about. But anyway, you'll rent a server and then you will physically have to go and install FluxOS, do the patching, that
Yep.
type of thing. So instead of it's physically your hardware in your home, it's in a data center somewhere else and you do the install. So those are
Yep.
the typical options that I like to look at, in terms of VPS options.
Yeah, so what I'm looking at, and not sponsored or anything, I've just heard good things about this talking with people that I'm actually exploring, but it's something I have to consider, is the one called Host My Flux. And they're a
Yes.
VPS service. Several people
Yep.
are using them. And the nice
Yep.
thing is with that, it's literally entirely tuned for it. So like you purchase it and then it literally asks for your collateral information and then you're just given a dashboard. And on that
Yep.
dashboard, you can see everything you need to. You can't really physically interact with it. You add in your collateral information,
Yep.
and then you could, on there, update, great, done. But like, it's fully built to do this. But the downside is,
Yep.
is like, to give people an idea, to run a Cumulus node, so it's 1,000 Flux to get started, right?
Yeah.
And then you need to go ahead and spend $11 a month. So something you have to consider is like, that's not a big deal during like a bull run, right? $11 a month in your return. But right now, it's like, okay, $11 a month, how much is that? And is it worth it? You know what I mean? So those are some of the challenges. It's like in a bull market or when Flux is doing well, $11 is nothing a month. But when, where you've seen Flux go. So that's just something that I've looked at as well, because then do you spend more? A question that comes up with everybody: do you spend more money on hosting it on a VPS versus just spending $11 a month on Flux? It could go either way. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's spot on. And to get back to Host My Flux, Jonathan,
Yep.
I think it's the name of the owner. He's fantastic. He's always trying, helping people. He's on top of the updates that rolls out. So, and I've only heard good things about Host My Flux. So definitely a good shout out to him. He's very active in the community. And you're spot on. You know, the costs depending on the tier. And what I've done, I've got a little spreadsheet because I look at these things. I'm not as good as you know, our friend. What is his name again?
Is it 𝐓𝐸𝐆𝐿 in spreadsheets?
𝐓𝐸𝐆𝐿, yes. I'm inspired by Seb, but not as good as he is.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've got a little spreadsheet where you know, I calculate the price and is it worth it and what is worth. Where is the best option for me at this point in time? So I've got a little spreadsheet that does that type of thing. And what I find is these VPSs is sensitive to the price of Flux, not necessarily so much the how can I say, the length of the queues. Obviously that has an impact, but more of the Flux price, because the dollar amount is fixed and it's per dollar. You know, it's a dollar amount. They don't you know, you can play in Flux in some of these providers, but you know, it's a dollar amount. And sometimes, at least in this case, the last that I looked at it couple of days ago, Cumulus doesn't make the most sense at this specific point in time, but some of the other options do. So you know, you just need to sort of do the math and figure out what works best for you.
Awesome. So on that note, hopefully what we talked about today has really, you know, helped people at least understand Flux a little bit more, Flux Nodes a little bit. But before we go our separate ways, I want to talk about your website, because you have a very cool website that you spend a ton of time on. That is super helpful. Everybody I know who runs a Flux node uses your website. So give us the rundown. What is it and how can it help people that are interested in Flux nodes?
It's really simple.
It's not that simple. Don't let it.
No. It is simple. You know, I created it sort of as a side thing to learn some extra skills when I changed jobs. But anyway, I don't want to bore everybody with a long sob story, but you know, the website is there for anybody. It's free. You don't have to pay. There's no ads on it. You can use it. The information that will be displayed on the website is the returns that you can expect from your Flux node. When last did you get paid? Where are you in the queue? What was your last benchmarks? What applications is running on your Flux node? If you've got multiple, you know, Flux nodes, which one has got the most apps? Which one has been the most up? What is your parallel assets? So what's all the parallel assets that you've earned? What is currently the fees for claiming those parallel assets? And it sort of shows some network information regarding the Flux project. How many nodes currently has got apps on? How much of the actual resources on the Flux network is currently being consumed? Those type of things. So it's really there for people that are running nodes, and it could be with a VPS, it could be in home, so that they can sort of track when are they getting paid, are they passing benchmark, what applications are running, and where do they stand in terms of that.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, to me, it's like if you're a GPU miner, this is like the what to mine, or this is like the Bible. This is the dashboard for Flux nodes. I mean, this is literally something where you're taking all this information where you have to go a million different places to find it, and you're just putting it into one location, which is exactly what we need as node operators. It's like, this is what we need and really should be built in. Like, you took a need and you definitely provided it. So what is that website so people can go check it out?
Yeah, I almost don't know what my own website is. So no, it's fluxnodes.app.runonflux.io.
Awesome.
So that's the website. And like I said, the big thing why I wanted to create it is exactly like you've mentioned, right? In the past, you had to click on a lot of different things to find benchmarks. And as soon as you had more than one node, it became a bit of an issue for me personally. So that's sort of, it's just created so you can just see it on sort of one page. And the beauty of it is it's also running on the Flux network, right? So that gave me experience as to, you know, who is using Flux and how easy is it to use Flux as a app provider. So that sort of helped me with insight into that as well.
Awesome. So guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put links to his site down below, put links to different areas where you can get started with Flux nodes, to this guy's YouTube channel. Go check him out. He does a ton of videos on Flux nodes. Thank you very much, Second TL, for joining me today. This was a lot of fun, informational for me, hopefully informational to the community. Guys, that is going to wrap things up for today. I appreciate everyone coming to check out the video. If you enjoyed the video, give it one of these. And from myself at Second TL, we'll see you guys next time. Take care. The 𝐓𝐴 Titan timepiece is the first NFT watch ever created. These one-of-a-kind timepieces paired with their NFT authentication provide a revolutionary method to fight back against the counterfeit watch industry. Along with the paired NFT authenticity comes maintenance and history records stored on the Cardano blockchain. Finally, this is the perfect gift to pass down to one of your sons or daughters who take up that crypto family mantle. Check out the 𝐓𝐴 Titan timepiece down below in today's video description.